The land was wide, wild, and untamed. In the late 1800s, between the deserts of Arizona and the rugged hills of New Mexico, life moved slowly but was filled with hidden dangers. The sun rose each morning, painting the sky with orange and gold, while the wind whispered through the tall grass and cottonwood trees along the rivers. For the Apache people, this land was not only home, but also a sacred place where every rock, tree, and stream carried meaning. Their lives were guided by traditions passed down from their ancestors. Traditions that taught them how to live, how to fight, and how to honor their people. Ayanna was a young girl of the tribe, no more than 16 summers old. Her name meant eternal blossom, and many said it suited her. She moved through the village with quiet grace, her long dark hair braided neatly, her eyes sharp and filled with curiosity. While other girls spent their time weaving baskets or cooking with the older women, Ayanna liked to wander. She loved the sound of the river that cut through the valley, and she often went there alone to gather herbs and listen to the water. To her, the river felt like a friend, a place where she could breathe freely. It was on one of these quiet mornings that her life began to change. As she bent low to collect wild sage from the riverbank, she heard the crunch of boots on gravel. At first, her heart leapt in alarm. She knew well that strangers often brought danger. She straightened quickly, her hand tightening around the small knife she carried for cutting plants. Then she saw him. A young man dressed in simple clothes with a wide-brimmed hat and dust on his boots stood a short distance away. He carried no weapon in his hand, only a water canteen slung across his shoulder. The man froze when he saw her. For a long moment, neither moved. His eyes, blue like the summer sky, locked with hers. Then, with a careful motion, he tipped his hat and said softly, "I didn't mean to frighten you." His voice carried across the water, calm and respectful. Ayanna's knife remained in her hand, though she did not lift it. She had seen white men before, from far away, riding with wagons or moving cattle across the plains. But this was the first time she had been so close to one. Close enough to see the lines on his face, the roughness of his hands, and the honesty in his eyes. She said nothing, only stared at him. The man cleared his throat. "My name's Thomas," he said. "I came down for water." He lifted his canteen slightly as if to prove his words were true. Ayanna slowly lowered her knife, though her body remained tense. She gave a short nod, then bent again to her herbs. But though she turned her gaze to the ground, she could still feel his eyes on her. After filling his canteen, Thomas lingered a moment longer, then stepped back toward the hills. "I'll be on my way," he said. "Safe gathering to you." And then he was gone. For days afterward, Ayanna thought of the stranger. She told no one about him, for she knew how her people felt. The Apache had lost much to settlers and soldiers. Trusting an outsider was dangerous, even foolish. But there had been something in Thomas's manner, a gentleness that did not match the stories of cruelty she had always heard. The next week, she found him there again. This time he was fishing at the edge of the river, a stick and line in his hand. When he noticed her, he smiled. "Good morning," he said. She hesitated, but then walked a little closer, curiosity stronger than fear. He offered her one of the fish he had caught, holding it out in his rough hands. She shook her head but could not stop a small smile from touching her lips. From that day on, their paths crossed often. Sometimes it seemed like chance, but soon Ayanna realized Thomas was waiting for her. He would be at the river when she came, always respectful, always careful not to frighten her. Slowly, words began to pass between them. At first, only short greetings. Then questions about the land, the weather, the plants she carried in her basket. She told him their names in Apache, and he repeated them clumsily, making her laugh. Thomas was the son of a rancher who lived miles away, beyond the rolling hills. His family raised cattle, working hard under the hot sun. He spoke of his chores, of fixing fences and driving herds. Life was not easy, but he dreamed of something more than endless labor. He confessed one day, almost shyly, that meeting her had been the most surprising and wonderful thing that had happened to him. Ayanna listened, but rarely spoke of her own dreams. Still, Thomas could see in her eyes a deep longing, a spirit that wanted more than what was expected of her. Their meetings grew longer, their words warmer. What began as curiosity slowly turned into trust, and trust blossomed into something neither had expected: love. But their love was a dangerous secret. Ayanna knew well the rules of her people. An Apache girl was meant to marry within her tribe, to honor her family and strengthen her people. A union with a white man was unthinkable, a betrayal in the eyes of the elders. Thomas, too, risked much. His father would never allow him to bring home an Apache girl. The settlers nearby spoke harshly of the tribes, blaming them for raids and fearing their warriors. Still, they continued to meet. Under the shade of cottonwood trees, by the glow of moonlight, they shared stolen moments. Thomas would bring her small gifts, a carved wooden charm, a ribbon of blue cloth, a smooth stone from the hills. Ayanna kept them hidden in a pouch beneath her blankets, treasures that reminded her she was not alone. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Thomas took her hand in his for the first time. His touch was gentle, uncertain, but filled with warmth. Ayanna's heart raced, and for a moment she forgot the world beyond the river. They sat together in silence, listening to the water and the rustle of leaves. Two souls from different worlds bound by a love neither had planned, but not everyone was blind to their meetings. In the village, Ayanna's cousin, a young warrior named Dakota, had grown suspicious. He had seen the way she slipped away at odd hours, the faraway look in her eyes. Dakota had always admired her, and he dreamed of making her his wife. When he followed her one night and saw her with Thomas, his heart filled with anger. To him this was not love but betrayal. He returned to the village, his mind burning with thoughts of shame and dishonor. Ayanna, unaware of the storm approaching, continued to dream of a future with Thomas. But the world around them was closing in, and soon their love would be tested in ways neither could imagine. The moon rose high in the dark sky, casting silver light over the Apache village. Small fires burned in the center, their smoke rising slowly into the cool night air. Most of the tribe had gathered to share food, tell stories, and listen to the songs of the elders. But Ayanna's seat near the fire was empty. Once again she had slipped away, her feet silent on the dusty ground, her heart beating fast with excitement and fear. Dakota, her cousin, watched her leave. He sat near the fire with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. For weeks he had noticed her strange behavior. He had asked himself why she avoided him, why she turned her gaze when he tried to speak of marriage. Tonight, he decided, he would follow her. Ayanna moved quickly, keeping close to the shadows of trees until she reached the river bank. There, as always, Thomas was waiting. His horse grazed nearby, its head low, while he stood tall in the moonlight. When she approached, his face lit up with a smile. He reached for her hand, and she let him hold it. They sat together on a flat stone near the water, speaking in low voices. Dakota crouched behind a bush not far away, his anger growing with each word he overheard. He saw Thomas place a small leather pouch in Ayanna's hand, a gift he had prepared for her. She opened it and gasped softly. Inside was a tiny carved bird made of wood, polished until it shone in the moonlight. Ayanna held it gently, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "This bird," Thomas said, his voice tender, "is free. It belongs to the sky. That is how I think of you." Ayanna's eyes softened. She placed the carving close to her heart and whispered, "You should not risk coming here. If my people find out—" "I don't care about the risk," Thomas said firmly. "I would face anything for you." Dakota's hands clenched into fists. His heart burned with jealousy and rage. He had dreamed of Ayanna since they were children. To see her give her heart to an outsider felt like betrayal, not only to him but to their entire people. He rose silently and returned to the village, his steps heavy with the weight of what he had witnessed. The next morning, Dakota went to the council fire, where the elders gathered. His voice was loud and angry as he spoke. "Ayanna has dishonored us," he declared. "She sneaks away at night to meet with a white man. I have seen them together with my own eyes." The elders stirred, their faces dark with concern. The chief, a strong man with hair streaked with gray, frowned deeply. "These are serious words," he said. "Do you have proof?" Dakota's eyes blazed. "I saw them by the river. He gave her gifts. She holds him in her heart while turning her back on her people." A heavy silence fell over the council. To the Apache, loyalty to the tribe was everything. Love for an outsider was not only forbidden but dangerous. The tribe had suffered from settlers who took their land and soldiers who hunted them. To accept such a union would weaken their unity. The chief finally spoke. "Bring Ayanna before us at sunset. We will hear the truth from her own mouth." Word spread quickly through the village. By afternoon, whispers followed Ayanna wherever she went. Women glanced at her with cold eyes, while children, sensing the tension, grew quiet around her. Ayanna did not yet know why, but she felt a shadow hanging over her. When the sun dipped low, a horn sounded, calling everyone to gather. The people formed a wide circle around the council fire. In the center stood the elders, and before them Ayanna was brought. Her mother's face was pale with worry as she watched her daughter walk bravely into the circle. Dakota stepped forward. His voice rang out clear for all to hear. Last night Ayanna met with the white man again. I saw her take his gift. I saw her smile at him as if he were her own. Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Ayanna. She stood tall, though her heart pounded in her chest. The chief's voice was firm. Is this true? Have you given your heart to an outsider? Ayanna's lips parted, but no words came. She thought of Thomas, his kindness, his courage, his smile, and she could not deny it. Finally, she whispered, Yes. A loud murmur swept through the crowd, half anger, half shock. Dakota's face hardened with triumph. The chief raised his hand for silence. You know the law of our people, he said. To love one who is not of the tribe is to betray your family. This cannot be ignored. Ayanna's mother cried out, She is young. Do not punish her so harshly. But her voice was drowned by others who shouted for justice. The council spoke quietly among themselves, their voices low and grave. After a long moment, the chief turned back to the people. At sunrise tomorrow, Ayanna will stand before all. She will be tied to the pole as a lesson. Let the people see what becomes of those who turn their hearts away. Ayanna's mother wept, covering her face with her hands. Dakota stood tall, but deep inside, guilt flickered in his chest. Still, he pushed it aside. He believed he was doing what was right for the tribe. That night, Ayanna was kept in her family's lodge under watch. She sat silently, holding the wooden bird Thomas had given her. Her heart ached, but she did not regret her love. For her, Thomas had shown a world beyond fear and hatred. Meanwhile, far beyond the hills, Thomas was working at his father's ranch. He was repairing a broken fence when a trader rode by. The man stopped and spoke of the Apache village in angered tones. They're preparing a punishment, the trader said. One of their young women was caught with a white man. Tomorrow they'll tie her to a pole. Thomas's hands froze on the fence post. His heart nearly stopped. What did you say? He demanded. The trader shrugged. That's their way. No one interferes. Thomas dropped his tools and rushed to saddle his horse. His father called after him, but Thomas did not listen. His mind was on Ayanna. He could see her face in his memory, her soft voice in his ears. He could not let her face this fate. As the sun set behind the mountains, Thomas rode hard across the open plains, the wind tearing at his clothes. His thoughts were wild with fear and determination. He knew the danger. If he entered the Apache camp, he might never leave alive. But the thought of Ayanna standing alone before her people, shamed and broken, was unbearable. He swore to himself that he would not let her suffer. Somehow he would find a way to save her. The night passed slowly, heavy with fear and sorrow. Ayanna sat in silence inside her family's lodge, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the flickering fire. Her mother stayed beside her, whispering prayers, but even her soft words could not ease the weight pressing down on Ayanna's heart. She knew that with the first light of dawn, she would be brought before the tribe. The decision had already been made. Outside, the camp was unusually quiet. Warriors kept watch, moving like shadows, their faces stern and cold. Some believed the punishment was just. Others felt pity for the young girl but did not dare to speak against the council. Only Dakota, hidden in his own thoughts, wrestled with guilt. He had spoken out of anger, jealousy, and wounded pride, but now as he lay awake he wondered if he had gone too far. Far away, Thomas rode hard through the night. His horse's hooves pounded against the earth, the sound echoing like a drumbeat of destiny. The wind whipped across his face, but he did not slow down. His mind repeated the trader's words again and again. They'll tie her to a pole at sunrise. Every mile brought him closer to danger, but also closer to the woman he loved. He tightened his grip on the reins and whispered into the dark, "Hold on, Ayanna. I'm coming." When the first rays of morning touched the horizon, the village stirred. The chief stood near the center, his voice strong as he called the people together. One by one, men, women, and children gathered around the open ground where a tall wooden pole had been planted deep in the earth. Its rough surface caught the light of the rising sun, casting a long shadow over the ground. Ayanna was brought forward. Her mother walked beside her, her face pale with grief. Two warriors followed close behind, their eyes hard but not unkind. They tied Ayana's hands with thick ropes and led her toward the pole. She walked with her head high, her dark eyes calm though her heart beat like a drum. Gasps rose from the crowd as she stepped into the circle. Some whispered in anger, calling her disloyal. Others turned their faces away, ashamed to watch. Ayana's little brother, too young to understand, clung to his mother's arm, asking why his sister was being taken. His mother could only weep silently, unable to answer. The chief raised his hand. "This is a day of sorrow," he declared. "Our people have suffered much from outsiders. We have lost land, lives, and peace, and now one of our own has turned her heart away from the tribe. Let all see the cost of betrayal." Ayana was tied firmly to the pole, the ropes binding her wrists and waist. The sun grew stronger, its heat pressing down, and she could feel the rough wood digging into her skin. She did not cry out. Instead, she lifted her chin and stared into the distance, her thoughts drifting to the river where she had first met Thomas. Drums began to beat slowly, their sound deep and steady. The crowd murmured, some in anger, others in sorrow. Ayana's cousin Dakota stood among the warriors, his jaw tight. He told himself this was justice, yet a part of him felt the weight of what he had done. He could not forget the look in her eyes the night she had held the wooden bird to her heart. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher. Ayana's strength began to fade, but still she stood. Her lips were dry, her arms heavy, yet she remained proud. The people watched in silence, waiting for the moment when the council would end the punishment. In the hills above the village, Thomas crouched with his rifle. He had arrived just as the drums began. From his vantage point, he could see the entire camp spread out below him. His eyes locked on the figure tied to the pole, and his heart nearly broke. Ayana looked so small yet so brave, standing alone before her people. Thomas's breath came fast. He counted the warriors, their bows and spears ready. He knew that if he rushed in without a plan, he might be killed before he reached her. But he also knew he could not wait long. Every moment she stood there was another moment of suffering. He whispered to himself, "I'll get you out. I swear it." Back in the camp, the chief signaled for silence. He stepped forward and spoke again. "Let this lesson be remembered. Ayana chose the love of an outsider over the loyalty to her people. Let the shame of this day guide our children so they do not walk the same path." The drum stopped. All was quiet except for the rustle of the wind and the cries of Ayana's mother. Then, just as the chief raised his hand to end the ceremony, a sharp crack split the air. A rifle shot. The sound echoed across the valley, startling the crowd. Warriors raised their weapons, scanning the hills. Horses neighed in alarm. Before anyone could react, Thomas appeared, riding down from the ridge at full speed. His horse thundered across the ground, dust flying in its wake. He fired another shot into the air, not to harm but to frighten. The people scattered, shouting in alarm. Ayana's eyes widened in shock. For a heartbeat, she could not believe what she was seeing. Thomas, her Thomas, riding straight into the heart of danger with nothing but courage in his eyes. Her heart leapt with hope and fear all at once. Thomas charged through the circle, his rifle raised high. He leapt from his horse in one swift motion and ran to Ayana. His knife flashed as he cut the ropes and her arms fell free. He pulled her close, his breath quick and urgent. "I've got you," he whispered. Gasps and shouts filled the air as warriors closed in, their bows drawn. Arrows flew, striking the ground near Thomas's feet. He shielded Ayana with his own body, holding her tightly as if nothing else in the world mattered. With a desperate cry, he pulled her onto his horse. She clung to him as they galloped away, the camp exploding in chaos behind them. Warriors mounted quickly, their voices rising in anger as they gave chase. Dust clouds filled the air, the pounding of hooves echoing like thunder. Thomas leaned low over the horse, urging it faster. Ayana held tight, her heart racing. Behind them, arrows whistled past, some striking the ground, others grazing the horse's flank. Still, Thomas pressed on, refusing to look back. The chase had begun, and the outcome was uncertain. But in that moment, one truth burned brighter than all the danger. He had come for her. He had not let her suffer alone. The horse's hooves struck the earth with furious rhythm, kicking up dust that filled the air behind them. Thomas held the reins tightly with one hand while his other arm circled Ayana, pressing her close to his chest as the desert wind whipped across their faces. Her hair streamed back, her heart pounding wildly. She could hear the angry cries of the warriors behind them, their voices carried by the wind, and the sharp whistle of arrows cutting through the air. The chase had begun, and it was unlike anything either of them had ever faced. Thomas urged the horse faster. His jaw set, his eyes focused on the open desert ahead. He knew the Apache warriors were skilled riders, far more skilled than he. They knew the land, its hidden paths and dangers. But he also knew he could not hesitate. Every heartbeat counted. Every stride of the horse carried them further from the pole that had bound Ayanna, but closer to the deadly pursuit that followed. Ayanna clung to him, her body trembling. She looked back over her shoulder and saw the dust clouds rising, a line of riders thundering after them. Boughs glinted in the morning sun, and the shouts of the warriors echoed like drums of war. She turned her face back into Thomas's chest, her voice barely above a whisper. "They will not stop. I won't let them take you back," Thomas said fiercely. His voice was low but steady, filled with determination that gave her strength. They raced across the flat valley floor, the horse's muscles straining as it ran. Ahead, jagged rocks and low hills rose like guardians, offering both danger and possible escape. Thomas guided the horse toward the rougher terrain, knowing open ground favored the pursuers. The canyon lands, though treacherous, might give them cover. The first arrow struck the earth near the horse's hooves, spraying dirt into the air. Another flew past Thomas's arm, so close he felt the wind of its flight. Ayanna gasped, clutching him tighter. Thomas gritted his teeth and leaned low, urging the horse with every ounce of strength. Minutes stretched into eternity. The pounding of hooves behind them grew louder, closer. Sweat stung Thomas's eyes, but he dared not slow. His rifle was strapped to his back, but he knew turning to fire would cost precious seconds. Escape was their only chance. At last, they reached the rocky hills. The ground became uneven, littered with stones and sharp edges. The horse stumbled slightly but regained its footing, climbing into the narrow passes. The shouts behind them grew louder as the warriors closed in, their horses sure-footed on the rough terrain. "Hold on," Thomas said, steering into a narrow canyon. Its walls rose high on either side, casting shadows over the path. The echo of hooves filled the air, magnified by the stone. Ayanna clung to him, her breath coming fast, but her spirit remained unbroken. For a brief moment, they were hidden from view. Thomas slowed the horse slightly, searching for a path through the twisting rocks. The canyon split into two directions, one leading deeper into shadow, the other climbing toward the ridges. He chose the higher path, hoping the difficult climb would buy them time. Behind them, the warriors' voices grew faint, but Thomas knew it would not last. They would not give up. The Apache were relentless hunters, and once they marked a trail, they could follow it for miles. As they climbed, Ayanna looked into Thomas's face. His skin was streaked with sweat and dust, but his eyes shone with fierce determination. She touched his arm gently. "Why did you come?" she whispered. Thomas glanced at her, his voice rough with emotion. "Because I love you. Because I could not let them hurt you while I lived." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow but of gratitude. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder, drawing strength from his courage. In that moment, the fear of the chase faded, replaced by the powerful bond between them. But the danger was not gone. The sound of hooves returned, echoing through the canyon. The warriors had found their path. Their cries rang out sharp and angry as they pushed their horses harder. Arrows began to fly again, striking the canyon walls, sending small stones tumbling. Thomas urged his horse up the rocky slope. The animal stumbled and strained, but somehow it carried them higher, closer to the ridge. From above, the land stretched wide, the desert rolling endlessly, broken only by scattered mesas and distant shadows of mountains. Reaching the top, Thomas halted for a moment, scanning the land. He knew they could not outrun the Apache forever. Sooner or later, their horse would tire. While the warriors had many mounts and the endurance of their people, he needed a plan, something more than flight. "We can't keep running," he said, breathing hard. "We need a place to make a stand." Ayanna's heart sank, but she understood. "There is a gorge ahead," she said, pointing toward a narrow crack in the land. "My uncle once told stories of it. Few dare to enter, for it is steep and hard to escape. But it may hide us." Thomas nodded and spurred the horse forward. They raced across the ridge, dust rising behind them, the sound of pursuit never far away. The gorge appeared suddenly, a jagged wound in the earth. Its walls dropped sharply, but within lay a narrow floor with scattered boulders. Thomas guided the horse down carefully, its hooves slipping on the loose rock. When they reached the bottom, he pulled the reins and stopped. The silence here was heavy, broken only by the labored breaths of horse and riders. Thomas dismounted quickly, helping Ayana down. He led the horse behind a cluster of rocks, then turned to her. His eyes were steady, though his chest rose and fell with exhaustion. "They'll find us," he said quietly. "When they do, I'll fight. I don't have much, but I'll make them think twice." Ayana shook her head fiercely. "No, you cannot face them all. They will kill you. I would rather fall fighting than let them take you back," Thomas said, his voice firm. "I won't let them hurt you again." Her eyes filled with tears, but she saw the truth in his words. He was prepared to give everything for her. She touched his face gently, her voice trembling but strong. "If we must face them, then we face them together." Thomas's hand closed around hers, squeezing tightly. In the shadows of the gorge, they stood side by side, waiting. Above, the sound of hooves drew closer. The Apache warriors had found their trail once more. Dust rose against the sky as they neared the edge of the gorge. Their shouts rang out, echoing off the stone walls, a fierce reminder that the chase was not over. Thomas raised his rifle, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the ridge. Ayana stood close beside him, her spirit unbroken. The moment of truth was approaching. The chase had brought them here, to this narrow gorge where escape seemed impossible. But in Thomas's heart, one thought burned brighter than fear. He would not let her suffer again. The sun was high in the sky when Thomas and Ayana stood together in the shadowed gorge. Dust floated in the air, stirred by the restless movements of their horse. The animal's ears twitched nervously, sensing danger. Above them, the sound of hooves and shouting voices grew clearer with each passing moment. The Apache warriors had tracked them here, and soon there would be no place left to run. Thomas tightened his grip on his rifle. He had only a few bullets left, and he knew it would not be enough against so many. Still, he lifted the weapon, his jaw set, his eyes steady. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his spirit burned with fierce determination. He would not let them take Ayana back. Ayana stood close beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. Her dark eyes shone with courage, though fear pressed heavily on her heart. She looked at Thomas and whispered, "If this is the end, I want you to know I do not regret loving you. Not for a single breath." Thomas's throat tightened. He glanced at her, his voice low and raw. "And I don't regret one moment with you. You're the only reason I'm here. If I fall today, I fall knowing I gave everything for you." Before either could say more, shadows appeared on the ridge above. The Apache warriors rode their horses to the edge, their bows drawn, their faces fierce with anger. Dust swirled around them as they shouted, pointing down into the gorge. Arrows whistled through the air, striking the ground near Thomas and Ayana. Thomas raised his rifle and fired, the crack of the shot echoing loudly off the canyon walls. A warrior's horse reared back, startled, throwing its rider to the ground. The others shouted louder, their voices rising like a storm. The warriors began to descend into the gorge, their horses carefully finding footing along the rocky slope. Thomas fired again, his last bullet striking a rock and sending shards flying. He cursed under his breath, knowing the rifle was nearly empty. He turned to Ayana, his face pale but determined. "Stay behind me." But Ayana shook her head. "No, we face them together." Her words gave him strength. He drew his knife, holding it firmly, ready for close battle. His chest heaved with every breath, but his eyes never wavered. The warriors came closer, their numbers overwhelming. Some leapt from their horses, moving quickly on foot. The gorge filled with the sound of shouts, hooves, and clashing echoes. Thomas stood tall, shielding Ayana, prepared to fight until his last breath. Then something unexpected happened. A single voice cut through the chaos. Strong, commanding, filled with authority. "Stop!" The warriors froze. The sound of hooves slowed. Dust hung in the air as silence fell over the gorge. From the group of riders, an older warrior stepped forward. His hair was long and streaked with gray, his face lined with years of wisdom and hardship. He was respected by all, Ayana's uncle, a man known for his fairness and strength. He raised his hand, and the warriors lowered their bows reluctantly. His eyes swept the scene, settling on Ayana. His expression was stern, yet there was sorrow in his gaze. "Ayana," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "you have brought shame by choosing an outsider. But this man," his eyes shifted to Thomas, "this man has shown a courage few would dare. He came into our camp alone. He faced our warriors without fear, and he did it not for land, not for power, but for love." The warriors murmured among themselves, their anger softening slightly. They had seen Thomas's bravery, and though he was their enemy, they could not deny the truth. The uncle continued, Love cannot be punished with death. If we destroy what is pure in her heart, then we are no better than those who have taken from us before. Let her go. Let them go. The chief of the tribe, who had followed the warriors into the gorge, frowned deeply. He looked around at his people, at the faces filled with conflict, anger, pity, uncertainty. Finally, he raised his hand. So be it. We will not shed more blood today. But let this be known, they are no longer of us. Ayanna has chosen her path. She may walk it, but she does not walk with the tribe. Ayanna's heart twisted at his words, but relief also flooded through her. She turned to Thomas, her eyes shining with tears. He gripped her hand tightly, their fingers intertwined as if they would never let go. The warriors slowly backed away, their horses turning toward the ridge. Some still glared with anger, but none raised their weapons. The uncle gave one last nod to Ayanna, his eyes soft with quiet blessing, then followed the others out of the gorge. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk above. Thomas lowered his knife, his hand shaking with exhaustion. Ayanna pressed her forehead against his chest, her body trembling as the reality of their survival sank in. "They let us go," she whispered. Thomas wrapped his arms around her, holding her as tightly as he could. His voice was hoarse. "We're free, but we have nothing now except each other." Ayanna lifted her face, her eyes filled with both sadness and hope. "Then that is enough." Together they climbed back onto the horse. The animal, though weary, carried them forward out of the gorge, away from the land that had been Ayanna's home since birth. She looked back only once, her heart aching for her mother, her brother, and the life she was leaving behind. But she also knew there was no going back. The desert stretched before them, vast and uncertain. The future was unknown, filled with hardship and struggle. But as Thomas guided the horse into the horizon with Ayanna holding tightly to him, there was also light. Their love had survived betrayal, judgment, and danger. It had been tested by fire and had endured. Days later, they reached the edge of the land near the ranch where Thomas's family lived. He knew there would be challenges ahead. His father's anger, the disapproval of neighbors, the whispers of those who did not understand. But he also knew that nothing could make him turn away from Ayanna now. She had stood tall against shame, and he had risked everything for her. Their love had been forbidden, but it had proven stronger than fear, stronger than hate. Together they began a new life, carrying with them the memory of the gorge, the sound of drums, and the promise they had made in their hearts, never to let each other suffer alone. And though their story was whispered as a warning by some, it was remembered as a legend by others, a tale of a girl who defied tradition and a man who defied death, bound forever by a love that would not break.